Greetings. Welcome to another edition of Todd Talk, where we take teaching theory and turn it into teaching practice. Today, we're going to be talking about some terms that you might run across when you're looking at gifted. Those terms are acceleration and enrichment. And these are essentially the two models that we use when we're going to challenge a gifted student. So the first thing we should do is define each of these. So what does acceleration mean? Well, it's in the name where you excel. So you're accelerating the content. So if a student is at a fifth grade level but can handle a sixth grade level content, then you might accelerate them to be learning that. Or if a student is, in ELA is able to handle the work, they can move at a faster pace, so they're getting through the work much quicker than maybe your typical student would be. So acceleration is the pacing of how you move through the curriculum. It's not changing it. It's not making it any different. The curriculum is the curriculum, but it's the speed that you go through it. So one way to think of it is as an arrow going, continuing on and accelerating. So that is one model of how you can deliver gifted services. The other one is enrichment. And enrichment is not accelerating. It's actually slowing down. It's the opposite. So you're taking content and you're slowing down and you're really exploring it. You're taking a look at all the nooks and crannies and all the details and all the tangents that you might find yourself on. So you should think of enrichment as kind of like digging down. So you're going down into the content. So, for example, if you're learning about rocks, and the content standard calls for students just to be able to identify the difference between sedimentary, igneous, and metamorphic rocks, that's all very well and good, but a kid might be able to get that really quickly. So give them the opportunity to go a little bit deeper into that. What else can they find? Is there ever a rock that goes from one to another? Is there how can they identify specific rocks? Like go out and find some rocks and to identify those using the characteristics they've learned about. So this is taking it deeper and allowing the student to explore it a little more. Now, the age-old question, of course, is which one of these models is the better model when it comes to gifted? And as with most things in education, it depends. And what does it depend on? It depends on the student themselves. So if a student is able to handle the pace of something and they have the ability to go faster and you have the ability to accelerate them, then that might be one avenue that you take. So the student is getting more information or more learning done in a year than your typical student would because they're covering more ground. So again, what that might look like is if you have a student who is in seventh grade math and they already seem to be moving through the material very quickly, you might grade skip them or accelerate them to the eighth grade math curriculum so that they can work on something that's going to challenge them. Of course, the drawback of this is that there may be skipping content. So for some subject areas like English language arts, where you can skip content because it eventually will circle back around on itself. When it comes to math, you might be skipping actual content that you'll need later on, or if you're in social studies class, you might be missing, whole millennia of information of what went on that you might be missing. So there are some drawbacks to acceleration, but acceleration is definitely a good way to challenge students, in that if they're able to handle the pace, let them work at that pace and allow them to keep moving ahead. And so they'll eventually get ahead of the class, and it may come to the point where they're so ahead that they will move on to the next level. Now, one good way to handle this is what's known as compacting the curriculum. So there doesn't have to be any skipping of content. Rather than that student going from seventh grade right to eighth grade, maybe have them go through that seventh grade material as quickly as they're able to before moving on to the eighth grade. So they may be able to get 2 years of curriculum in 1 year because their pace is so quick. So that's kind of a solution to the problem of skipping content. Enrichment is, like I said, is digging down a little bit deeper. And so one way to look at this is that uh, the disadvantage is it does cause more work for the teacher. So if a student is able to dig down deeper, then do you have to find them those resources? Do you have to find the information that they can explore? Or if you're doing it right, then are you giving the student the opportunity to do these explorations on their own? Maybe you're giving them the space and the time to work on this, and then they will develop and deliver a product that shows what they learn that is different from what the other students are doing. And this then can be troublesome to some teachers because not everyone is doing the same thing. But at the same time, the student that's digging deeper, the student that's exploring, is going to learn so much more than is typically taught. For better or for worse, in the United States educational system, we cover content standards, and there are so many of them that we can't cover them at much depth. So we're only getting a surface level understanding of these. Enrichment allows a student to go deeper into that. And again, there might be tangents. So if a student is learning about, let's go back to science, they're learning about electricity, and they're only required to know a certain aspect of it. Well, do they explore that further and how circuits work and learn how to use how electricity is set up in a new house and how it flows throughout the house? So they might be exploring all sorts of things and learning things at a much deeper level than your typical student. So as a teacher, you have to be comfortable knowing that there are students that are not staying with the class, which shouldn't be a problem anyways, because these students are advanced students, and so they're advancing quicker than your typical students. So rather than hold them back, we need to give them the space to do this, whether it's acceleration or whether it's enrichment and going deeper. You have to look at the specific student to figure out which one of these is going to work best. Another consideration is the teacher themselves. The teacher may not have the curriculum to be able to present to a student that's above grade level, or there may not be an opportunity for a student to skip a whole grade of content and go to the next grade level because the teacher doesn't have the knowledge to be able to teach that. But there needs to be avenues that allow students to do either one of these, depending on which they need most. With math, it typically is an acceleration. I see a lot of acceleration with math, and that because kids are moving so quickly that they're able to go into the next year's material or the next unit's material or whatever. When it comes to subject areas like science and social studies, I see that more as of enrichment. You don't want to go through it quickly. You want to really understand it and learn it at a deeper level, so that you have a true understanding and a grasp of what it is that you're learning, and then you can either apply or create it in the real world. So it depends on your subject area, it depends on your teacher, it depends on the student. What you want to try to do is match up what's best for the student. So what they have one size fits all, and I'm always amazed at these. Like I'll have a shirt one size fits all, but it doesn't really fit anyone. It's so large it doesn't fit the small people, and it's not large enough to fit the big people. So one size fit all many times does not apply. And so what you want to be able to do is to be able to tailor what it is that you're asking the student to do to fit their needs, whether it's acceleration or whether it's enrichment. But having a good understanding of both of these is going to be important if it's something that you're going to do with your students.